Hi, I'm Carl Flowers, Technical Director of Authentica in the United Kingdom. I've been working on leather biodegradability since 2002, and I hope to share some of my experience with you to help you compete with plastics. Why do we want biodegradable leather? Well, some leather can be made to live long, but what about short-lived leather? Can we build that to be compostable so that it can be returned back to nature? In the EU, composting is defined as a type of recycling. Composting leather is a way of closing the loop. What is a loop? Instead of production to landfill, the idea of a circular economy is to loop materials at the end of their life back to the start. A circular bioeconomy is one step further, where we use nature as a way of looping our resources back. This prevents waste, and nature has been doing this for millions of years. So how do we break things down in the circular bioeconomy? There are 4 distinct steps. Biodeterioration, where the surface of the material is affected by biological and physical effects. Degradability, where the material weakens because of the effects of the environment, for example, heat. Disintegration, where the material starts to fall apart. And finally, biodegradability, where the biology starts to eat and consume the material to produce carbon dioxide and water. Can leather do these things? Well, a rawhide will break down in 10 days or less. Very smelly. The treatments like tanning can slow that breakdown. The more you treat, the slower the breakdown. Some leathers will take hundreds of years to break. Currently, in the European Union, there are some chrome-free leathers that are being sold that take 30 days or less to break down in compost. These leathers will not break down while they are being used. So how do you change your process to make your leather biodegradable? This is complicated, and many of the chemical companies are well positioned to help. However, you can start with some simple tips. Do not use vegetable tannins. Choose a chrome-free tannage. For the retannage, choose a biopolymer that you know will biodegrade very well. For example, proteins. Have a very light finishing, or choose a biopolymer that breaks down for example, nitrocellulose. Choose polyurethane as a final resort, as thick polyurethane doesn't biodegrade. Wherever you can, choose chemicals that have a low chemical oxygen demand, but maybe a high BOD. Once you have a leather, it is then time to have it tested so that you can prove your claims. There is no leather composting standard, but the industry has modified existing standards. These modified standards can be used for leather. The group of tests takes about 3 to 4 months to run. And the most common specification for leather is BSEN 14995. BSEN 14995 needs 5 things before a leather can be called compostable. The metals must be below a certain level. No chromium. Chromium is an automatic failure. The levels will always be high. The leather must disintegrate by more than 90%. The leather must biodegrade more than 90%. The compost must not be toxic to plants, and any normal person should recognize it as compost. This table shows the permitted levels of metals in the leather. You can see on the right, the levels of chromium in the leather cannot be higher than 50 parts per million. This means that chrome-free or veg tan is really the only types of leather that you can use. So let us look at the tests. The main test is the biodegradability test. It is called ISO 20136. It is run for 80 days, but it shows what would happen in 6 months. It measures the CO2 that comes from the breakdown of the leather powder in water. It is not easy to pass this test. Any chemical that does not break down will cause the test to slow down. Here is the typical graph we get from ISO 20136. And you can see at the top, the graph may reach 100% at some point. At the bottom, the red graph will take a very long time to reach 100%. We use modeling to extend the graph to see where it will be at 6 months. The biodegradability that we see at 28 days is used to calculate the relative biodegradability. The sample is compared to a collagen control. Obviously, the biodegradability cannot be more than 100%. The method uses some very strange assumptions that we as an industry need to discuss. So ISO 20136 can also be done in solid compost. This test is called ISO 14855-1. In other words, the CO2 produced by the compost is measured. The same kind of curve seen before is produced. The same 90% breakdown is expected. This is a hard and expensive test but it is the preferred test used for plastics. The test I like the most is the leather disintegration test, ISO 20200. We use a modified plastic test. It is quite similar to ISO 16929 test, which tests the material in 70 liters of compost compared to 2 liters. The test is run for up to 6 months, with 3 months being normal, and the leather breaks down into bits. It is a very hot test, just like industrial composting. The compost is then tested for any harmful effects. Does it affect plants? And there are a number of tests that can be used. 80% of all plants in the compost must germinate, and the plants must grow to within 90% of the blank plant height. Here on the left-hand side, you can see some normal bean plants growing in leather compost. On the right, you can see some beans that have been grown in compost that is harmful to the plants. The same can be seen in plant height. On the right are healthy plants grown in blank compost that the plants like. On the left and the center, you can see plants that do not like the compost that they are growing in. Vegetable tanned leather as compost always grows nice, healthy plants. Vegetable tanned compost always has lots of undigested leather in. Undigested leather means food for the soil. Vegetable tanned leather composts always hold good moisture in the soil. The composts can also be checked for a range of known soil toxins. We screen for over 200 substances that we know are forbidden in soil. On the right, you can see a range of types that we look for. We have also added additional ecotoxins to look for if we suspect that a leather may have them. There is no microplastic test. We know that this will be a big question in the next few months. A very popular test that we run is called the quick screen. It is mainly used for research and development. Rapid prototyping that helps tanners and brands to get to compostable leather quickly. The quick screen is fast, 20 days. The speed and the fact that it is not for certification means it is cheap. Successful leathers can then be fully tested. So now you know about biodegradable leather. The topic is not difficult. For many tanneries, they don't even start with their leathers. They look at the compostability of their waste. A final thought. Many brands are using this as their next marketing opportunity. As a minimum, it is worth discussing internally. I hope to be available today to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks to the organizers of this conference, and thank you all for listening.